Nope, that's not the correct thing. Yeah, present. That's what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
All right. Good morning, everybody. Welcome. Bienvenidos. Bienvenue to the Cleveland Salesforce Developer Group. I think that's gonna be now my my formal opening, since we tend to have people from all over the world nowadays. I don't see such an international crowd today, though, but that's been a really nice silver lining of quarantine. So we're your co-hosts, Linda Kane and yours truly, Orlando Briseño. We're the co-leads of the Cleveland Salesforce Developer Group. And these are some upcoming events that we'll have around the Cleveland area and Northeast Ohio. Linda, would you like to talk about the Cleveland Salesforce Saturday?
Sure. We have our local Salesforce Saturday. We meet every other week in the afternoon, just because sometimes I don't want to get up at 9 o'clock in the morning. We kind of focused lately on doing some of the trailhead projects that are out there and extending them so that we don't just do what's in the badge. We talk about other ways we might use or add on, especially since some of those projects are quite a bit older. And there's definitely new development that could be done related to those. I hope you'll consider joining us. We meet today at 3 o'clock. That's the sign up, and I will also paste it in the chat for everybody.
Awesome. Yeah, I was going to say I'm going to share the links in the chat when I stop presenting, but that's taken care of. Some housekeeping for today. We used to say that to preserve bandwidth, we could turn the cameras off, but from what I heard, Zoom is better at preserving bandwidth, so that's not strictly necessary. The session's been recorded, and you can ask questions in the chat, and we'll ask Terry if there's a pause or at the end, and you're of course also welcome to ask the questions yourselves. And I'd like to welcome Terry Miller. He's been kind enough to present this super cool and interesting topic. Terry's an independent consultant. He has been for over 25 years, and he's a Salesforce certified application and system architect. And he'll be presenting and talking about process builder to Lightning Flow migration. And with no further ado, Terry, take it away.
You have to stop sharing, Orlando.
Excellent. All right, folks. Thanks for inviting me. I appreciate it. It is fun to be here and to do these things. So I personally like to see everybody's faces. So if you don't mind turning on video, I don't care if you're in your jammies, that's fine. We look good from, this high up. So it's fun to see your reactions as we go through it. I would ask if you would also find yourself a piece of paper and something to write with. I know we're electronic people and we don't always use paper, but get a piece of paper for me if you can. I want to use that in just a moment. I have not been an independent consultant for 25 years, just to clarify that. I have been for 13 years. And have loved the journey that I've been on. It's been a lot of fun, and I've helped quite a few people actually get started doing this same thing as an independent. So it's been a lot of lessons learned in the process, but it's been a lot of fun. All right, everybody have your piece of paper? All right, well, I'm going to turn on here a timer. And what I want you to do, hopefully you can see the timer there on the screen. I want you to draw for me a house. So if you could you don't have to be a fancy artist, just draw a house. I've got two minutes up there on the clock. Hopefully you're able to see that on my picture, and just put together a house for me. If your drawing would look anything like mine, it'll probably just be kind of a blob of different lines going all over the place with a couple window things maybe on there and a door. But give me your best house. All right, we're down to a minute, and I need you to stop for just a second. I changed my mind. What I really need you to draw for me, and I'm sorry to do this to you. I know you've spent a lot of time and effort making a wonderful house, but I really need it to be a boat. So if you could, just don't start over. We don't have time to do that. So just turn that thing into a boat, if you would. Could you do that for me? I'm going to go ahead and start the clock. We've got half our time is left, so just make it a boat. And I'm sorry to do that to you, but sometimes you know, we change our minds and we have to go a different direction.
Okay, my pirate boat house is going well.
And guys, I need you to stop one more time, please. We got 15 seconds left here. I just got off the phone with the executives, and they told me that this boat house thing that we're building, it really has to be able to navigate land. So I'm not sure how you're going to do that, but if you could make your picture something that will navigate on land, and I'm sorry, only 15 seconds left, so just do the best you can. Make it something that will navigate on land for me. A duck boat. All right, time's up. All right, so for those of you on video, and if you're not on video, please turn your video on for me. I'd love to see what you drew. Oh, nice. Very good drawings. Oh my, we've got an artist up there. That looks really nice. Some of you. Fantastic. Awesome. That is fantastic work. My goodness. I could never have drawn as nice as some of those. That looks awesome. Thank you, folks. You know, sometimes life is kind of like that exercise we just did, where we're going along, everything's nice and smooth, and then all of a sudden, life happens and things change on us. And what I've discovered in my time working with projects and working with Salesforce even is, you know, every three times a year, they will introduce something new to us, and we have to kind of shift and make some adjustments. How many of you remember workflow rules? Use your little reaction thing and just wave your hand or click that thing and put it in the chat. Yeah, workflow rules. They were fantastic. I mean, we could do things like update records. We could create tasks. We could even do outbound messages, whatever those things were, because none of us really knew back then what an outbound message was. And then all of a sudden, Process Builder came along, and life was fantastic. Process Builder was awesome. We could do so much more with Process Builder than we could ever do with workflow rules. And we had these little, I call them diamond shaped things. I don't know if they are or not, but it's, you know, those little triangle things, blue things on that screen. And you have the true line and the false line, and you could go off and do these actions over here and come back and you could actually group them together in a way that allowed you to create some really nice elaborate automation in our systems. Well, a couple of years ago, I was working at Dreamforce at the automation booth, and my cohort that was supposed to be there to kind of help me with that booth didn't show up. And the project manager for Flow happened to join me and help me with that booth. And I'd never met her before, and I can't even remember her name now. And I'm pretty sure she's transitioned off and there's somebody else now doing it. But she made the comment to the group there that, you know, there's not a whole lot more we can do with Process Builder. We get those nasty emails when there's an error, and we have to try to decipher that thing, and it's all a bunch of gibberish. And, you know, there's just nothing we can really do to make that better. And we really need people to transition from using Process Builder over to using Flow. And I thought, well, I'm not really a Flow expert. I wasn't at that time. I don't consider myself an expert even now. But that really caused me to kind of rethink things a little bit about how I am doing things. And I started to pick up Flow and begin to use that. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to go on a little journey. We're going to look at Process Builder and the common features that we might use in Process Builder. We're going to see how those things look in Flow. And I think for those of you who are new to Flow, if you are new to Flow, raise your hand or react there for me so I can see. Yeah, all right, awesome. Got quite a few of you. Do I have any Flow experts on this call? Anybody like say, I am like the best with Flow. I'm not sure why I even showed up today because I already know it all. Any of you? None of you? Come on, I was hoping somebody would be able to keep me in line today. If that's you and you're just too shy to say so, please help me as we go through this, because if I get something wrong or you think there's a better way, I love to learn as I go through these things. So don't be shy if you think that I'm telling you something that you think could be done a little bit better. I'm okay with that. Okay, so what I've put together for you is a variety of different techniques that we have in Process Builder. We're going to look at that. I'm going to share my screen here. Hopefully it's going to work if I can find where I have everything at. And let's just dive in and take a look at the automations that we have in place and what we're going to build live using Process Builder. All right, you see the screen okay?
Yes.
All right, we are on an account record. And with the account record, I've got several automations that are set up here on the screen, but we're going to focus on two of them today. The first one is the CSTAT rating. You'll see that it's currently got the little green heart, and this customer is satisfied is their rating. We also have a customer priority of low. The first automation we're going to look at is simply one that says if our CSTAT rating switches to unsatisfied, we want this priority to automatically switch to high. Now, very simple to do in Process Builder, right? We can do that really easy. We're going to see how that looks in Process Builder and then build that one in Flow. The other one that I've got is the address screen here. We have, I think this is the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame address in Cleveland, I hope. And so we've got that address here, and we've got a little checkbox above it that if I check this box, it will update my contacts addresses to match the account address. Okay, so those are the two automations we're going to do today. And let's go ahead and test them out. I'm going to change this street to, just to give you a quick demo of that it works. We'll spell out street. We've got unsatisfied here. Let's go ahead and save this record. And if I've got Process Builder enabled, which I hope, you will see that our customer priority did change to high. And if I take a look at our addresses on our contacts, you can see there that the street did indeed get spelled all the way out. Okay, so let's take a look at Process Builder. And in Process Builder, we are going to scroll down here. Here's our CSTAT rating. CSTAT rating equals unsatisfied. And when that happens, we're going to set customer priority to high. We also, for fun, created a chatter post, and we sent an email alert out to the manager to let them know, hey, this is an unsatisfied account. So that's the unsatisfied. We're going to replicate this. The next one down is our update address. And that simply is updating the contacts, address information, and then coming back and unchecking that little checkbox that we had on the account. Are we good? Good so far? You with me? Thumbs up if you are. I appreciate the interaction. It's awesome. All right. So let's jump over to Flow. Now, the first thing that we do when we come into Flow is we have to create a new Flow record. And I have found when I do this, there's some nice things that Salesforce has done here for us. We get to choose the type of flow that we want to create. Now, if you are brand new to Flow, my recommendation is the easiest way to learn Flow is what I'm going to show you today. And that is going to be using the record trigger flow. Record trigger flows are kind of the equivalent of what you would be doing if you were using Process Builder. So when you save the record trigger flow, if it meets a condition, would run. Your other options are screen flows. Those are probably your more advanced. If you're brand new, I wouldn't start there. For sure, I wouldn't start there. You have scheduled flows. We have platform events and auto launch flows. Again, we're going to just focus here for the sake of learning Flow and starting to get ourselves comfortable. So I'm going to select that and click next. And I have another prompt that comes up for me. Now, I know that many of you probably have jumped into Flow before, and when you do, you get in there and you see that big old wide open white space on this screen, and you think, what the heck am I supposed to do here? That's the freeform version. If you're new, even though it's in beta, select the, I just clicked on it, now I forgot what they called it. Select the one that automatically creates the diagram for you. This is so much easier than having a white canvas that you have no idea what to do with. So
auto layout, I think.
Is that what it was called? Thank you, auto layout. Perfect. So click on that one. And if you want to follow along, you're welcome to kind of follow along. You probably don't have some of the fields in your system, but you're welcome to jump in and play along here. So just like Process Builder has this little square box in it, and that's where we define the object that we're working with. We also have to choose whether or not we want this to run when the record is created or when it's created and edited. So let's take a look at Flow. Here on our start block, we've got the ability to choose our object. So let's choose, in our case, the account. Now this is something that's a little bit different. And again, if there's any experts on the call, I would love your opinion of this. But because I'm going to try to replicate Process Builder, I'm going to say I don't want any conditions to run. I just want this to run when the record is saved, and I'm going to put all my conditions within the flow, and you'll see what I mean in a moment. But what you could do here is if you want to have this flow only run when a certain set of conditions are met, maybe it's a record type, maybe you have one that's specifically designed for one record type, you could put that in here. And then this flow will only run when that condition is true. For our use, I'm going to select none, and it's just going to be the account, the object. Now there's this other section that I'm going to click on here that is where I'm going to be able to tell the flow if I want it to run when it's created, when it's updated, when it's created or updated, or what the heck, I can even do deleted. I can delete records. Now you can't do that in Process Builder. So you have that capability. Now I don't know if I would recommend it, but you certainly could. You could certainly delete records in record trigger flow. So we're going to go with the option that we had that matches our process builder, which is record is created or updated. And now I have this run the flow before the record is saved or after the record is saved. And I'm thinking, what does that mean? I just hit the save button and it does it. And it's like, that's confusing. Well, let me introduce you to order of execution. When you hit that save button, the record actually goes through a whole variety of things inside of a transaction before it's actually committed to the database. And what that looks like is like this. So before the record is actually saved, we have all of these items that happen. We have system validation that runs. We have our record trigger flow before. That's what we're working on. We have Apex before triggers that run. We have system and user validation. System and user validation might be things like, I want to, on my screen, I want a certain field to be required, or your validation rule says that state has to be filled out if you've got an address there, things like that. That's your validation rules. Your duplicate rules will run if you've got that enabled. And then the record gets saved. Well, what happens there is at the point that it's saved, you now have an ID for this record. So in our case, we hit save. If it's a brand new record, I would now have a record ID that I can work with. So I'd have an account ID. After that happens, we have a whole lot more things that run. And those are your Apex after triggers. So that's your code. For most of you, I think you're developers, so you're probably somewhat familiar with this diagram, I'm going to guess. Assignment rules, workflow rules, that's your old stuff that used to be out there. You have process builder and flows. And then you have escalation rules. Your record trigger after flows run here. So remember when we looked at that flow, we had the option of before or after. When we look at order of execution, here's my before, record gets saved, here's my after, and then the transaction is fully committed and you're back in charge now of your record that you just saved. This is super, super important. If you, and when you're trying to think about which of these you need to choose, here's my 95% rule. If you are updating the record that triggered the flow, in our example, that's the account. I hit save, it's the account. So if I'm updating a value or a field on that account record, I want to choose the before the record is saved. If I am updating or creating or doing anything outside of that account record, I want to choose an after. Okay, that's 95% of the time is going to be true. So let me repeat it. The before record is if you are updating a value on the record that triggered the flow, that's your before. If you are updating anything else, that will be in your after version of your trigger. Okay, everybody good with that? I see some heads nodding that they understand that. Awesome. All right, so here's the quiz. When we look at what we just did here, so we're going to start with our CSTAT. I modified our CSTAT rating, changed it to unsatisfied, and I updated the customer priority to high. I have the chat window up here, and I want you to toss in the chat window. Should this be a before or an after? Awesome. Look at you guys. You guys are smart. Everybody's got that right. Yes, it is the before. Very, very good. All right. So we're going to choose before and we're going to click done. That was probably the hardest part to decide, before or after. That's the part that can sometimes get us a little bit confused. Now I've got this little plus sign that I can move to, and I'm going to click on that plus sign. And I'm thinking to myself, all right, I need to do an update field because that's what I did in Process Builder. Process Builder is an update field. So I'm looking through my options of elements here. They do call these elements, and I don't see an update field. It looks like I can get records. I can loop through things, and I don't know what that would be used for. I've got decisions that I can make, and I've got assignments. Well, let's come back here to our Process Builder for just a moment. And I just happen to think I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself, and because I forgot to put my decision in. So my decision is the CSAT rating. So let's start with that. It's the little diamond account CSAT rating equals unsatisfied. I need to put that into my flow before I go too much further. So let's do a decision element. You'll notice that the decision, also a triangle. Well, you guys are going to think I'm really, I flunked elementary school. The diamond shape, and it looks just like the diamond over on Process Builder, except the color is different. And that's okay. I'm going to choose decision. When you create a new decision in Process Builder, you have to give that decision a name. And so that's what we have to do here as well. The screen certainly looks a little bit more complicated, but it really is the same. I just need a decision for customer or C. I probably should put my glasses on. CSAT rating. Okay, so now I've got a name. And in Process Builder gave you two paths by default. One was the true path, one was the false path. We sort of have that here. We could label this our true path if we wanted to. But true doesn't really tell me a whole lot about what the decision is. So I'm going to actually name this, instead of true, I'm going to call it unsatisfied. And now I've got the ability to create my condition for what does unsatisfied mean. And then I'm going to click on this search for resources, and I'm looking in here thinking, well, this is very different than what I see in Process Builder. In Process Builder, I could just have my list of fields there and it was fantastic and wonderful and life was good. Well, I want you to remember this phrase. We have this option here called $record. And the phrase to remember is this: $record is your friend. Okay, if you are brand new to this, $record is your friend. And the reason it's your friend is because it represents the record that triggered our flow. Okay, you'll notice that it says account right underneath it. And if I click into that, here's my list of fields that are on that account object. I can scroll down through this and find my CSAT rating. I also have the option to simply start typing, and it will filter that down and find it for me. All right, so resource, there's our CSAT rating, and our operator is simply going to be that equals, and my value is all of my pick list options are right here, and it's simply, I'm going to choose that unsatisfied. Are we good? We got that part. That's our criteria for when we're going to go down the unsatisfied path. Now we also have a default outcome here. Think of your default outcome as the false in Process Builder that just drops you down to the next element. That's how we're going to leverage that as well. Now I sometimes will change this value because default outcome doesn't really explain what it is. So I'm just going to simply call this, instead of default, they're satisfied. So now I've got unsatisfied and my satisfied path. Now just a little quick insight for you. With decisions and flow, you are not stuck to just two outcomes. You can click this little plus sign and you can create a third outcome. You're not stuck to just true false. So if I wanted to do another outcome that is the neutral or some other status CStat, I could do that here in Flow. So a little bit of a cool feature there. Now at the bottom of the screen, we have when do we want this outcome to execute? If the condition requirements are met, or only when it's first triggered. That is the exact same thing as what you have hiding underneath the Advanced tab in Process Builder. Words are slightly different, but it's the exact same process. And so I'm going to have this run only when the record first meets the condition, because I don't need it to run every time I hit save. And then I'm simply going to click done. And you'll notice now I'm back in my flow on the canvas, and I have my unsatisfied path. I have my satisfied path. And I have these lovely little plus signs to now where I can add additional items. So in Process Builder, those additional items are the things that we see here as our actions. I know my Zoom screen just got in the way. All right, unsatisfied is the direction we want to go because we want to update that priority field. So let's click on the plus under unsatisfied. And again, kind of going back to where I was a little bit ago, where I said, well, I need to update a field, but I don't see an update field here. Why don't I see that? I don't know what I'm going to do. Well, remember that if we're creating a brand new record here, we don't have, the record hasn't been saved to the database yet. So I don't technically have a record that I can play with from the standpoint of update. So in Process Builder, when you updated your record, that record had already been created in the table before that Process Builder ran. And in the before flow, it hasn't been saved yet. So I need to just simply use an assignment. And the assignment allows me to think of the assignment as I'm working with this record, but it's still in memory. So I don't have to go to the database to get it. I don't have to go to the database to update it. I'm just working with it in memory for all of you developer folks. So let's just say I need to do an assignment, and I'm going to give it a name of assign priority. I did not spell that right. Even with my glasses off, I can tell I did not spell that right. All right, so I'm going to go to my variable list, and remember who is our friend? Put it in the chat window for me. Our friend is $record, right? So $record is here. That is my account record, and I'm looking for priority. So I'll simply type that in. There's my customer priority equals, and here are my pick list options. Customer priority is high. And then I can click done. Any questions on that? Does that make sense? All right, silence. So I'm going to assume silence is okay for now. Let's take a look back at Process Builder. We also have this idea called chatter post. So when that same condition is met, I want to make a post into chatter. And let me go back and ask you the question. Put it in the chat for me if you would. Does updating or creating a chatter post, is that going to be in a before record trigger flow or an after record trigger flow? Look at that. You guys are all brilliant. I love that. Everybody's got after. Awesome. Okay, so I need to leave my before trigger, and let's come back over to flow, and let's create an after. Again, clicking the new button, record trigger flow. We're going to use the auto layout. And by default, this is already set to after, but I'm going to go when the record is updated and created so that we are the same that we have with Process Builder. And right there's my account, no conditions, and finished. Okay, so let's add our decision tree in here again. So we remember we had to do a decision to check to see if the CSAT rating was unsatisfied. So let's create that decision here. Our label will be unsatisfied. Dollar record, our friend. CSAT rating equals unsatisfied. Only when the condition is met. We'll change the default outcome to satisfied. And we have our decision in place. Okay, so that was just a quick rewind from what we, the same thing that we did on the before, okay? Could you have cloned the, or saved the before and then changed it? Yes, yes, you actually could have done that. That is a great concept. I never thought about that, Jade. That's awesome. I love that. Yeah, you could have done that. You would have had to save your flow as a new, not as a new version, but as a brand new flow, and gave it a good name. That's awesome. I love that. All right, so we have our decision, unsatisfied. Now I'm looking for posting to Chatter. And I noticed that, man, in the after, I do have a lot more elements here. I can create records, update, get records, delete records. So what do I want to do now? I need to create a Chatter post, but Chatter posts are kind of tough to do with a create record. It's a little complicated. I've got my same assignments, decisions, and loops. None of those sound right. But up at the very top, I have what we call an action. So that sounds kind of interesting. Let's take a look at an action. So I come in here and it's like, that's kind of an empty screen. So what am I going to do with this guy? And so I'm sitting here looking through some of these items over here. Nothing kind of stands out on that side of the screen. So let me just click into actions and see what I have here. And I do have quite a few things here. This is kind of interesting. As I scroll through these, I can create tasks in here. I can edit comments, log calls. Interesting. I'm not going to scroll through that list. I'm just going to type in here. I wonder if Chatter's in here. So I'll just type Chatter, start typing, and look at that. We have a post to Chatter option. So I click in to select that. My screen gets a lot bigger with a variety of new fields. Just like Process Builder, I have to give it a name. So I'm going to be lazy and just call this post to Chatter. And now I'm down here at these input fields, and I've got a message field here that I need to type in my message. You know, that's this piece, that's my message. And where did it go? Okay, now, those of you who are developers, you understand the concept of variables. I'm not going to do this probably the correct way, and I know I'm not doing it the right way on purpose just to make this simple. I'm simply going to put my message right here and just type it out. If I was being smart and doing this the correct way, don't you love it when your teacher shows you the wrong way to do it and says, don't do this? It's kind of like your parents when they say, don't touch the stove, and the first thing we do is touch the stove. To keep this simple, I'm letting you break the rule for just a moment and just type in the message that you want to be posted to Chatter. It saves us a little bit of time in doing this. The correct way to do it is listed out on my blog post that talks through this particular posting to Chatter. You should create a constant or another variable that you put your message text into, and then just reference that here. So that would be the right way to do it. Forgive me for doing it the wrong way for sake of demonstration today. Now, our target name or ID, that is the equivalent of this post it to this record. So if I want to post it to this record, that would be my friend, $record account. And I'm looking then for the account ID right here. Now I've got a variety of other things that I can do on that action. I'm simply going to keep it very, very simple for us today and select done. And that now will create our chatter post. Okay, ready for the next one? Our next one is an email. We need to notify the owner's manager that this customer is no longer satisfied. All right, so before or after trigger, record trigger flow? After, good, good. I love that. So let's look at our after. And I'm just gonna simply add another action here by clicking our add. And again, I'm looking through these things and I'm thinking, okay, I don't see an email. If you don't see it, take a look under actions, because that might just be where you end up finding some of these items. So we're looking now for an email. And when I type in email, I get two options here. One of them is an email alert. You can see that listed right here. That is your email alert, the exact same email alert that we used in Process Builder. So think back way back at those old workflow rules that we would use. And one of those things that we could do is send an email alert. That's what this is showing you here. That is that email alert that was defined back using the old email alerts out of Salesforce. Now, my other option, which is really cool, is I can simply build a brand new email right here as an action. Now, this action is using our global actions that are defined inside of Salesforce. So if you're in setup and you type in email global actions, you get a whole list of actions that Salesforce has created. One of those is this send an email. Now, what's really kind of cool here, just to go a little bit broader, if you wanted to create a custom action on the account object to do whatever you needed it to do, that would be available in this list. That would also show up. So just a way to kind of extend some of the capability, create an action, and it's going to show up underneath here in your after record trigger flows. So backing up just a hair, I want to keep this really simple for you. So we're just going to use the old email alert, the same one that we had over here in Process Builder. And it wants me to give it a name, and I'm simply going to call it an action send email. It needs to know what record we're associating it to. So $record account ID. And done. All right, any questions on that? That all makes sense? We have just replicated exactly what we were doing here in Process Builder. Now, did that look fairly simple? Was that not near as intimidating as the big white canvas?
Yeah, that
Or easier? I've got, Mara, you're kind of shaking your head. No, you still confused? Yeah, all right. What part of it, Mara, confused you? And I don't mean to put you on the spot. If you're not comfortable, tell me just to shut up and I'll go away. But if I can help you, I'd love to help you with it. We're good? Good, okay, all right. Okay, so let's take a look then at the address portion. So on the address piece, we had the checkbox here for updating a contact address. When that address changed, it updated our contacts. Let's take a look at that one. So update address, here's our decision. And is this a before or an after? If we need to update the accounts, yeah. And I saw there was a question that we just scrolled up off of my screen. Let me go back and find that real quick. So if you selected this to trigger after, you could just do one flow versus two. Yes. Yeah. And that's what we're going to do now. We're going to use the same after flow that we have already created. And you'll notice that I'm done with this particular path. There's nothing in the nothing in the satisfied. We've got our unsatisfied pieces here. Now I'm just going to come down to where they join back together, and I'm going to add another element, which is going to be our decision. And this decision is the update contact addresses. Update contact. And our condition is going to be with $record. And I'm looking for the, I forget what I called it, update all contact addresses checkbox. And my value there is simply going to be true. Okay. My default outcome, I'm going to say, we'll just say do nothing. We'll keep it kind of fun. Do nothing. All right. Okay, so now I've got, I'll scroll that up a little bit. Now I've got my decision in there. I've got an update branch and a do nothing branch. Okay. So what did we have to do over here when that condition is true? We need to update the contacts. And so we are looking for, in Process Builder, you had to go in and select the fact that you wanted this to be a related record and it's related to your contacts. Process Builder is smart enough to know the context in which it's running, and that we don't have to do really anything other than say, I want to update the contact records, and it already knows that it's the contacts that are associated to this account. If I come over to our flow, I've got the ability to do an update record here. But in the flows, trying to think how to say this, we always have to define the record that we're working with in the after, because all of these elements that we're using, they work across all of the different types of flows. So if I'm using a screen flow can do 1,000 different things over there. And so because we're sharing the same components across all of the flow platforms, we do have to define the records always. So that in the previous actions where we always had to say what our record ID is, that's what I'm talking about. You're going to see that we're going to have to do that here as well. So let's do the update record. And you'll see in a moment what I'm referring to with that. So update contact addresses. Now I have the option here to use the IDs and all the field values from the record or record collection, or specify the conditions to identify records and set the fields individually. Well, let me drop past that for just a second and choose contacts here as our object. And then this option up here will start to make a little more sense. So if I go with the specify conditions, my object is the account. I've got the ability to create the criteria. So this is where I was saying Process Builder is smart enough to know the context in which it's running. It knows that we're on that specific account and its related contacts. This is not quite that smart. So I know that I need to update the contact, but I don't know which records on the contact I need to update. So I have to define it. And so I'm clicking in the fields. These are now my contact fields. And I want the account ID that equals the account that triggered the flow. So back to dollar record account ID. Does that make sense? Give me some thumbs up or something there to let me know that that's sinking in. That is definitely something different than Process Builder.
There's a request, Terry. If you could show again where you specified update all contacts.
Oh, on Process Builder?
I think there was a screen prior to this update that you were showing in the flow.
On the flow.
Well,
okay.
Yeah, on the flow, there was the prior screen. I don't know what was the purpose of that, where you had to set the contact decision.
So on the previous screen, we did the decision that said if that checkbox was marked as true, that gave us our branches for the update contact and the do nothing.
Oh, got it.
On that.
Got it. Okay.
Yep. Now, one of the things you'll notice with these elements when you're building them in Flow is they are somewhat dynamic, and I'm going to kind of half screw this thing up a little bit. I'm going to go back to use the IDs and all field values. Developers, you're going to understand this concept of, let's say you're working with multiple records and you've got them stored in an array of some sort. That's what Flow is referring to as a record collection. It's multiple records. And if you've got something that you've done within your Flow to create that collection of all of those records, you could simply choose this first option and point to that record collection. Does that make sense for the developers? I think you'll probably get that. Our easiest way, if you are brand new to Flow, is simply choose the option that we did. And because I jumped out of that, I'm going to need to redefine it. But it's simply our account equals dollar record account ID. Okay. Now what this does is it gives me now at the bottom of the screen the ability to choose the fields on that contact record that I want to update. So I am going to use the mailing address. So I'm going to choose, just type in mailing. There's all my fields from the account. And to keep life a little bit simpler, I'm just going to add some of these so that I don't have to do it. And we'll just run right through these real quick. Mailing, country, latitude, country. Let's get that one in there. Mailing, postal code, state, mailing street. All right, I got them all. So these are my contact fields. Now the value that I want to use is all going to be coming from dollar record, our friend dollar record account. And I need the city. So that's billing city. Country. This part should make sense to you. This is pretty much identical to what you would be doing, where you're just simply assigning the values that you want to have updated. And if I did all of that right, we should be good. And I did not. Okay. Oh, I hate that. This thing loses it, and I think it might make me redo all of what I just did if I don't get lucky. Oh, poo. All right. That's what it does if you do something wrong and you have to go back and fix it. So sorry about that. Should not have switched this midstream. It erased and got it all confused. So let me rebuild this real quick. And see, this is our account ID. One thing that, as just a lessons learned the hard way, is it is a good idea to save your flows. Sometimes you get into a really large flow and you can, let's say you've been working in it all day long. This has happened to me before. Working in a flow all day long and I forget to save the flow. And all of a sudden I find out when I go to hit save that my session has expired and everything that I had just worked on has to be completely redone. So it's almost like losing an entire day. So my little mess here isn't quite that bad, but as you do these things, you start to learn the things not to do. And I did not obviously learn this one. So let's quickly get these back in. Any questions that you have why I'm keying these guys back in?
There's one from Mark exactly about this. So the right side of value in the flow always pushes to the left.
Yes.
It's per day. That's the assignment, right?
Yes. Yep. That is correct. You know, I've watched some presenters that are smarter than me. They somehow have software that does all of this keying stuff in for them. I have not figured out how to pull that off. One of these days I need to ask one of those people, how did you do that? That would save me a whole lot of time. All right, there we go. There's our update address. Now you got to see that twice. Any questions on that? Hopefully going through it the second time, maybe it sunk in a little bit. Are we good?
Can I ask you a
All
question?
right, so, yes.
So does that S record always represent the object where it triggered from? Because this is the after trigger flow.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
It is always the record that triggered the flow. Now, what's really cool that's coming in your in this next release, you're going to see a dollar prior record. I think it's either prior record or record prior, I forget. But that's going to let you do a comparison between what the values were before you saved it, comparing to the values that you have in what you're trying to update. So in Process Builder, we had a function called isChanged. That prior value or prior record is going to give us the ability to compare our before and after. So that'll be really, really cool. That's one thing that you can't do right yet with your after record trigger flow.
Terry, Jade has an answer for you. She's asked about how they do that, and it's a recorded video that they play while they talk.
Oh, do they? Oh, yeah, you're right. I need to scroll my chat down. I'm missing everybody's stuff. Sorry about that. Spring 21. Terry, I've asked if a recorded video that plays while you talk. Yeah, I would love. Oh, it's a recorded video. Okay, gotcha. Okay. All right, I'll have to look into how I can pull that off. That would be awesome. Thank you. All right, so let's save these guys before I do anything else kind of silly. This is our after. So one of the things that I would really seriously recommend is that you always start your flow name or somewhere in here have the object that it represents, that it doesn't show up as a column option. At least it hasn't yet. So I'm going to call this the account after record trigger flow. We'll save that. And then let's go to our before. Let's save this one as the account before record trigger flow. All right, just like in Process Builder, you have to activate your flow or your process. We have to do the same thing with Process Builder. So I'm going to activate these guys. I'm going to come back to Process Builder. I'm going to deactivate these. And this is where we get to test how good I did this. And we will reset these values. And get zoom out of the way, hit save. Okay, so we're reset. Let's try this out now with our activated flows and let's see what we got. We'll go to unsatisfied. That should update priority. We'll update our street addresses to just ST with a period. We're going to hit save. This is the part where I get really nervous. And it did update the CSAT rating to high. Let's check our chatter. We should have 2 posts here. Yep, there's the chatter post that we created. And I'm certain that if I open my email, I probably have an email as well. Oh, you know what? I forgot to uncheck that box in the after trigger. But let's see, check the addresses. Let's see if it did that. And it did. There's our street. So a little bit of debugging to do there. I do need to go back into that and uncheck the checkbox. Now there's an interesting piece here that this is that 5% where you don't use the before. If it let me start that over. Let me say it again. Normally, if you are updating the record that triggered the flow, like unchecking this box, you would do it in the before trigger. Well, all of the updating of my contacts happens in the after trigger. So if I uncheck this in the before, then I won't see that it's checked when I get to the after. So this is that exception where I would need to uncheck this box also in the after. So it would have to come back, update the account, uncheck that box. Any questions on that? And how are we doing on time, Orlando? Are we good?
We are totally good.
Good. Okay.
You can keep going.
Okay, cool. I think the Salesforce Evangelist team uses a tool. Oh, yeah. Thanks, Stuart. I did talk to one of their SEs once, and he had some tool that they use that would autofill text in. I may have to jump back and check with them. All right, so let me show you a different flow. And this is really, I'm going to show you my favorite action that I do almost in every implementation that I put together. So erase everything that we just did. I'm going to show you something a little bit different. Let's jump over to an opportunity, and I hope I have this set up. We're about to find out. I'm very risky. Logging a call. When you're, let's say we have an opportunity record and your salespeople are calling on folks and they come in and they log their call. One of the things with an opportunity is you always want to have some kind of a follow-up on that. No, maybe not always, but most of the time you want to have a follow-up on that opportunity. So this is my very favorite action that I create. I will add a couple fields to my log a call screen. Let me just put my call notes in here. And those 2 fields will be the follow-up date and a follow-up subject. With that follow-up date, I can select the date that I need to follow up with them. And I can put a subject here. And when I save this record, oh yes, I need a contact. Let's put in, actually, I think it's Jack, if I remember right. Jack is with Burlington. So let's go with Jack. He's the guy I called. And I'm going to save this record. And you'll notice what happens here is I get my log a call. Here's my call from today, indicating that I called Jack. And then it also created for me my check on the contract follow-up task. You want to see how that works? This is also done with a record trigger flow, but let's jump in and let's get out of some of this stuff. Let's look at the way the fields and everything are set up here. So I'm going to go to activity. First thing that you're going to want to do is create your fields. So your follow-up date, follow-up subject, simple date field, and a text field. Those are on your activity. The next thing that you need to do is go to your task opportunity object. Go into your button links and actions, and you're going to create a custom log a call screen action here. You're going to predefine all of the values that you already know. That's one of my pet peeves about the out-of-the-box log a call, is that we already know what record we're on. We are, and let's say I'm on a contact record. I already know who my contact is. I can predefine all of these values, and then on my layout, I can get rid of all of that extra noise so that my log a call is very focused on just the information that we need to capture. So there's my custom action.
Hey, Terry,
And then if I go, yeah, question.
if wanting to know is if you have this create a follow-up only if the opportunity is still open or on any opportunity.
So the way that I use this is it's on. I put it on all of the opportunity records. If you don't fill the value out, then it won't create the follow-up for you. So it's still up to the salesperson or the user's control whether or not they want to create the follow-up. It just makes it really easy if they do need it. I do this same thing on the account and the contact object as well. But opportunity is where it really makes a lot of sense to have that follow-up and make that super easy. So let's go into flow. And I've got right here a flow after create follow-up task. So let's take a look at this guy. View the details. Let's open up this guy. Okay, so this is on the task object. It is when the record is created, and it's a after record trigger flow. In this scenario, I do apply a condition just because it's the only automation that I'm going to have on my task object. If you have a bunch of other automations, you could still set this condition to none, and then add a decision inside of your flow that says if the follow-up date is not null and the subject is not null, so that means they have to fill out both, that's when this flow is going to run. And so it creates my follow-up task. So there's my task object. Here's all the fields that we are going to populate. And we're populating them, the activity date using the date that they keyed in. So that's that follow-up date field. The owner is the same owner that the original, this is really hard to explain. Your original log a call record that got created, we're just matching the same owner as that record. Priority is going to match the record that was created. Our status changes to not started. Our subject is going to be whatever they keyed in as their follow-up subject. Subtype needs to be set. Subtype is what creates that little phone icon that you see here. If you don't put that in, it will not show up for you. And where's my screen? Where did it go? Here we are. Okay, so that's your subtype. The what ID, that's again pointing back to the same log a call record, and there's our name or the person who we are using. Okay, so that creates the follow-up. And then the update clearing the fields. So if I am over here and I'm creating that log a call record, I don't want this record to continue to have that follow-up date and subject listed on it. That is, come on screen, come up. So what I'm doing in that particular flow is just clearing out those original fields, the follow-up subject and date. That's super, super fast, but that's a really, really quick look at how you might leverage flow in a way that really, I have never had a client tell me, no, that's awful, don't do that. Everybody wants that feature went in as a very, 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 very simple to do. Again, it's an after record trigger flow. You create a couple fields on your task record. You're going to create your follow-up task using the flow. You don't have to create the original log a call record because Salesforce is already doing that for you when you filled out the form. So all we have to do is focus on the follow-up task and then clearing out those fields. Can you show the clearing out fields?
Yeah.
Yes. So this is the task object. The condition is where the dollar record, so that's the original log a call that got created, where that record is the activity ID. And then we are simply setting the date to nothing, setting the subject to null. What do you recommend as best practice for debugging flow errors? Waiting till the next release where it gets a little bit easier, maybe. Best with these record trigger flows, use your sandbox to create them, because your ability to debug these is you have to actually run the script. You have to go make your record update before it's going to run. We don't have the luxury of being able to simply click the debug or the run on a record trigger flow. They're there, but they will not work for you. So yeah, unfortunately, it's a little bit tricky to debug these. I'm hoping that Spring solves that. It definitely solves it for the other types of flows. So
I was going to say, for screen flows, the debug in interview is useful.
Yes, it is. And if you've not seen the way they're doing it in the next release, it's way easier even in the next one. You still have the same interview panel on the side, but as you are debugging through it kind of highlights as you go through what the elements are that are involved in what you're looking at. It just is significantly easier. It's very cool. Yeah, it gives you a link in the email. Yeah, that's right. And yeah, so the email that you get with the error message, you click on that link. I think this is how it works, and it takes you right into the flow to where the error occurred. And I think it still puts you even in context of all of your variables that were assigned at that time. It's really, really cool. At least it sounds like it. I've not had hands on it yet. Other questions? I know some of you have had to take off. All good. We want to keep the prior higher probability on an opportunity when the opportunity stage is changed. I think it would be an after. If we want to keep the prior higher probability, that's a good question, Brian. And the reason that's a good question is probability is something Salesforce is setting for you as those stages change. I believe I'm correct in saying this, and it may not be set yet in the before. So it does sound like it's one that would fit the 95% rule, but my gut tells me you're right. You may have to do it as an after. Any other questions? Good stuff. Good questions. I saw the empty string, not null. Does that make a difference in the context? I'm assuming you're referring to what we saw here. Empty string, not null. Yeah, empty string is, it's kind of interesting that they label it that way, because you kind of think that maybe null is the same as an empty string, and it really isn't. For those of you who are developers on the call, you understand this probably, but an empty string would be like if I set a value equal to quote quote with no spaces or nothing in between those quotes, that's an empty string. A null value, it's like it doesn't even exist yet. So if you tried to reference it, you would get an error. So empty string, it's like it's assigned a value, but there's just nothing in it. Do you
Good
recommend
question
converting?
about when to use each automation tool from Conrad?
Yes. Yeah, so I would recommend people start to navigate over to Flow using this. So here's what you have to do though, and it really comes down to a lot of this order of execution concept. You do not want to have in your system workflow rules and process builders and record trigger flows all on the same object. If you do, you are creating an environment that could really cause problems for you. So the number of times I've gone into a client engagement and they say, my system is not running well, we're getting random errors all the time. And one of the first things I will look at is what do they have set up for their automations? And almost always they've got a whole ton of workflow rules that are active. They've got multiple process builders on the same object. They probably aren't dabbling in with Flow yet, but then they'll also have Apex triggers running. And you really don't want that, all of those things happening. You're creating a really bad environment and just asking for trouble.
Yeah.
So
sounds like a potential.
I strongly recommend. Yeah, go ahead.
Like a potential recursivity nightmare.
Yeah. Yeah, my recommendation is decide on an automation tool, stick with it. I'm not quite as picky about whether or not I have triggers and declarative, so programmatic and declarative automation happening on the object. I tend to want to trust my developers to be developing well enough that I can still build automations without a conflict, but you still have to be really careful with some of that. Any suggestions to learn ScreenFlow? Yes. I've got a whole series of videos out on my YouTube channel. That's Terry's Tidbits. There's a couple playlists. I lead the Des Moines user group here in Iowa, and last year we took them through a whole series of different flow training. I will tell you that don't try to replicate those flows. They were designed purely for training. They're not something that you'd want to put in your system, but spin up a sandbox. You could certainly learn some of them there. There is also on Unofficial SF. That is the best flow site out there. Unofficial SF. They have a whole series of training out there as well. So take a look at that site. They've got things that allow you to extend your flow beyond what you can imagine almost. Yep. It's things that would make you think, I'm going to have a developer build this because there's no way it could be done in Flow. Well, maybe not. So if you go take a look at that, they've got all kinds of fancy components and things that you can bring in. That's awesome. How do you recommend trying to clear up an org that has workflow process? One at a time. try to get rid of your workflow rules, move your workflow rules out. This is something that's super easy for me as a consultant to say, because I I don't have to live in your environment. I know most of you who you probably have a bunch of workflow rules. You have a ton of process builders that, that probably are miles long. And the task to transition away from those into flow it can be pretty enormous. And the testing that you'd have to do to verify everything's working, I get it. So I would just kind of slowly try to build those. Maybe if you're doing agile type development processes, just slowly try to get transitioned over. There's really, I don't have a really magic solution for that. If you don't have that many, it's a whole lot easier, but that's often not the reality for people. One of the big stumbling blocks I have found until today is that so many guides and YouTube videos are already outdated as flow is changing so fast. It is changing fast. And the training that we had for, it's called the Let's Get Flowing here. Let's Get Flowing. As we were going through that, we had to add sessions to the training to try to help address that very issue. You're absolutely right. It changes so fast. There's also this series that from Process Builder to Lightning Record Trigger Flows, that is right here, and it every video breaks down each of the elements that we commonly use with flow. So that is very fresh. I just put that together just in the last couple of months.
So there's another question asking if there's a limit on the number of flows per object.
I recommend putting them all together as like what we were building. So if I have an account before trigger and a account after, I would try to put all of them in that flow. Now there is a feature of flow similar to Process Builder where you could do an invocable process where you basically have another process builder and you're calling it from a central, from a centralized process builder that is the one that's active. You could call another process. You can do that same thing with flow. So if you've got really complex things happening, you might want to create a invocable flow and then just call it from your primary flow. That's definitely an advanced topic, but that's what I would do. Let's see.
Yeah, there are
lots of questions, and I'm trying to keep
good
up
questions.
with them. Yeah. Let me bring that.
Do you want to pick them or?
I don't mind. It's up to you how much time that you have. If you want me to keep going through them, I'm happy to.
We're having a great conversation.
Yeah, I'm good. One of the big stumbling blocks I found. Okay, that one we did. What's your criteria for threshold to decide if that flow is big enough, complex enough, and I would be better off doing it in Apex? Yeah. I struggled with this when flow first came out. I was one of those people who said, that's stupid. Why would you ever do something in flow? I can code it. I can just put it in an Apex trigger and manage it that way. That was my mindset for a long time with flow. If you, I'm going to assume you're a good developer. You can develop things more efficiently than what you could build in flow. Now that said, if I'm working with a customer who doesn't have on-site developers, I don't want to leave that customer with something that they have to come back to me for to maintain. I will build it in flow for them. If I'm following the Salesforce mantra of clicks not code,
yep,
then I'm going to use flow. Where I will leverage Apex anymore is if it reaches a level of complexity where it just is too darn confusing to read inside of a flow. And you'll know when you hit that point. It's like, man, this is getting really messy. And so I don't know that there's a magic equation, so to speak, for when to do that, but there's just kind of a gut feel, maybe, is the way that I approach that.
I was the one that asked that question.
Oh yeah, Orlando. Yeah.
What we had this big project that we decided to do on flows. Previous to that, we just had a big project with Aura Lightning components, and we felt great in using them. But we were approaching this new project and decided, oh, it will be good to do it in a declarative way, so an admin can pick it up. And it ended up being a very UI dynamic, data-driven thing. It was cool. That's when I did some XML hacking for that, because we broke it down in subflows. So we were in the XML getting stuff out to refactor it. I don't think that's advisable. I don't think that there's a way to select things in the flow to move it around yet. I haven't used them in a while, but I've seen flows that are crazy, like spider webs, and I'm like, ooh.
Yeah. Yeah, I inherited a flow with one of my clients that I shouldn't say this one since it's recording, but it was probably 200 or 300 different elements on that flow. And when you get into the flow and you start to recognize there are patterns that are repeated over and over inside of it, there are very clear branches of that flow that really could have been brought out into its own flow. And so you start it, as developers, we understand this concept of object-oriented development, where you create your methods and just reuse them. That was one of those examples where I could have, when I'm building my flow, I'm thinking about my flow like a developer would. And if I'm going to need to repeat something over and over, then I'm going to bucket that into its own flow, call it when I need it, let it bring back the data that's relevant to me. And you'll find that when you get into those, those of you who are developers, and I'm assuming since this is a developer group, several of you are, use your developer mindset when you're creating these, and you will end up with a much cleaner flow.
Definitely.
Hey, Terry, before we go on, I don't want to stop questions, but I do want to get the recording stopped. So
okay,
I want to say thank you. It was awesome.
Yeah, very good.
I think everyone's learned a lot, and I will make the recording available to everyone. As soon as it's out there, I will send an email to all the attendees with the link, and it will also be on the event page.
Very good.
Yeah, there are